Today's episode is brought to you by Silencer Central. Now, if you haven't used a suppressor/silencer, they're the same thing. If you haven't used them hunting, you need to. I recently did this and I am on board fully. Before Silencer became one of our sponsors, I was on a couple of hunts where they were using them. Here's the advantage: follow-up shots. Not only do you get that one surprise shot, you also get a second one because that animal isn't scared of the noise. They may have felt the impact, but they didn't hear the noise. Check them out. It is unreal. They are building silencers specific for hunters, lightweight, short silencers that you can put on any gun. I had an amazing conversation with Brandon Maddox, who is the CEO, founder of Silencer Central. Check that episode out, as well as check silencercentral.com and let them know that Ike sent you and get set up today. Welcome to Eastman's Podcast Edition. I'm Ike Eastman, your host, and today I have the special guest, Adam Weatherby. Now, it is not often, Adam, that I get to sit down and talk to a third generation in a three-generation company like myself. Mm-hmm. Something that you and I share. There's only a few of us in this mm-hmm. industry that are that way. So today I just want to talk about who Adam is, who the brand is, where it all started, what you guys got going on. And I really want to dive into, because I know your story is unique in the sense that you went outside of the business mm-hmm. for a time and then got invited back, came back, and got this huge task of not only running a generational legacy brand, but also moving it to Wyoming and innovating and doing all these things. So let me start with this. You grew up in California, right? Where did you grow up, actually?
Correct. You know, when my grandpa started the business, it was in Southern California. So Southgate, which you couldn't imagine if you were to go there now that we'd ever been there. But in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, from what I've been told, it was a pretty cool place.
Yeah.
So when I grew up as a kid, it was in Southern California. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, my dad wanted to get it more out of Southern California, the Los Angeles area. Actually looked at moving out of state at the time, even looked at Wyoming.
Really?
Decided the roots were deep at the time in California, and this was late 80s. We moved as a family up to the Central Coast, Paso Robles area in California. So I moved up there like in middle school.
Oh, wow.
My dad ended up commuting down to LA, about a 4-hour drive for a few years, and in the early 90s got the business moved into San Luis Obispo County, Paso Robles area. Atascadero was the name of the town we were in initially. And so that's kind of where I went to high school and all that kind of stuff, and then, of course, where we moved the business here 5 years ago from.
So you guys, you moved this business twice in its history, in its three generations. Not yes. only, but and probably when your dad moved it in the 90s, he moved it out of Southern California back into California, which was very rural back then. I mean, it was a really neat place. That was back when my dad was doing lectures around all the Central mm-hmm. California and talking to hunters. And there's a ton of hunters in California. People don't understand that. So you moved this thing twice.
Right. So when he moved it from LA to the Central Coast, it was not maybe as drastic of a move as when I moved it to out here in Wyoming, but it was lose majority of your workforce, have to hire new ones, you're moving to a more rural area. So there were a lot of things there that he had to do. And what's interesting even is, I'll talk to my dad now, there were so many reasons why he moved, so many reasons why I moved it. But a cultural reset at the onset of a new generation is kind of part of that too. That it's I don't know, as you're building a team, as you establish roots in a new location, there's a little bit of rebuilding that you can do. And my dad would look back at that time as being significant in company history when he moved it. And then no doubt I would say the same thing. So there's so many reasons why I think, not fast forwarding if we're going to talk about any move conversation, but that move that he did and the move I did was more than just geography. There was a lot to it.
So let's talk about that. You talk about culture reset. What do you mean by that? Was it a bad culture? Was it a good culture? I mean,
I don't know if this is true with Eastmans and with your family business, but particularly, we have, I guess it's different in that we're a manufacturer. We have products, where you're in more of the advertising and marketing and, just the voice that's out there on behalf of us. which is awesome. But I think there are times within even old brands that are around today that we would know of, and iconic brands that do rebranding, that just get fresh new starts. Now, that may not be because they moved. It may be a change in leadership. But if my dad kept it the way my grandpa would have, the business would have died. If I keep it the way my dad did, the business would die. And if someday, if it's still around and the fourth generation takes it and they let it how I lead it, it's going to die.
Right.
And so we have to be, and it's not dissing the past. It's what worked. I mean, technology, innovation, things change, styles change. There's just differences that have to happen. I think we need to adapt and lead forward in those ways. I often joke, like, for instance, my dad in like 1983-ish came out with our first non-wood stock. Okay, for Weatherby, that was almost just heresy. It was a fiberglass stock, and he said, this is where everything's going. My grandpa hated it, would never have touched it. He gave my dad a chance, and it was like the bestseller, right?
Right.
And so, you know, there are guns that I joke about all the time we come out with now that my grandpa would roll over in his grave for. There are things, though, that we have now, even in our product line, and it's not like I'm old, I hope, but there are things that my son likes as a 21-year-old that are in our product line now that I don't care for as much. It doesn't mean I'm not going to make it just because it's not my preference of what I want to take into the field. It's realizing the different generations and the different needs and wants that are out there. And so it's adapting to that. And I'm not disrespecting the former generations, because I believe the same is true of my predecessors in years to come, that there has to be changes, not just in products, but I guess you asked about culture, you know, too. You know, what do you mean?
And that's funny. Actually, I'm going to back up a little bit. In our family business, it's very similar in the sense that things changed, and it changed not because we changed, but it changed because society and what was accepted and what was cool and neat changed. My grandfather, who started filming in 1957, he would roll over his grave, probably has many a times thinking about what we do on YouTube and all the kill scenes, and that's a thing, because he used to say kill scenes that's a cheap shot. He would roll over, but that's what the culture, our society, that's what the hunting industry wants, and that's how they're consuming it, is YouTube. There's also things that he would go, I never thought it would ever be this. I never thought that our brand would be a household name. I'm sure it's very similar to yours. So I think with culture, it's not necessarily our company culture, our employee culture, but it's the culture that we're living in our surroundings. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Because the same is true with products. You know, some of the old timers are like, why'd you discontinue this one wood model? And I can't believe they're coming out with all this carbon fiber stuff. We present stuff to the market. It's just business 101.
Yeah.
We see what sells, and we tend to make those.
Yeah.
Like, the consumer is demanding the product. Now, sure, you can innovate and try stuff out, but at the same time, like, we're going to make what consumers are asking for. You're going to show them content that they want. That's our job. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Within a confine of ethics and all that stuff, 100%. You know, I say this all the time. Nobody's building rotary phones anymore.
No.
There's no point, because nobody wants them. Not that we couldn't build them, not that they didn't work. They just, that's not where we're at.
And we try to keep old, and I don't know if you do this on the media side, but we try to keep, you know, certain products in there, special runs, or like when we did this Wyoming commemorative, we try to really keep those things there. They're smaller runs, but, you know, there are business times where why'd you discontinue that? It's like, well, the minimum order I have to order on those blanks of wood, I'd have 8 years of inventory because we just don't sell many of them. And last time I checked, they're not paying for me to inventory that wood. So there are business things that we have to do. Yeah. But I think it is neat that we always hang on to as much of our past as we can while still being relevant enough for our current market to hold on to that. And that's what separates both our family brands, is that we didn't just start 5-10 years ago.
Right.
It's and our name is the name of the brand as well, and so with those things, I think it's important to hang on to that history and to honor it, but not to be stuck in our ways. And so the same is true with culture. It's true with leaders. It's true with our organization internally. in all those different things. Brenda, my wife, she got a degree in organizational health, or in organizational leadership, I think is what it is. But she's passionate about that culture and training and recruiting, and our values are on the side of some of our coffee mugs. So she's about really doing that and being intentional about it, because if you're not intentional, sometimes it just goes the way that it's going to go. Yeah. So it's more than just product. It's about your brand.
So you talked about history and understanding, your history and what's important with history. Let's talk about Weatherby's history a little bit. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't know the full story. Mm-hmm. They know that Weatherby's this new cool kids brand to them, but there's 1945, right after World War II, when this all started. Let's touch on that. Why did your grandfather say, you know what, I think I can do this better?
Sure.
I assume that's what happened.
It is. It's kind of like a lot of entrepreneurs from that generation. It came out of a need and a desire to see something done better. For him, it was speed. So my grandpa grew up in Kansas, born in 1910 in rural Kansas. He got a love for the outdoors, kind of just trapping, shooting crows. But he was a sharecropper down there, had 7 older sisters, and didn't own like the shirt on his back or the shoes on his feet type of deal. Married my grandma. My grandpa's name is Roy. Grandma's name's Camilla. And married my grandma, and he just knew I want to do life a little different than this. I want to raise my family different. He moved out to the West, moved out to Southern California again in the 40s. It was beaming with opportunity and good weather and just so many different things and influential people.
Yep.
So he moved out there not knowing what he was going to do.
Wow.
He actually sold insurance door to door, he was a hustler. He was a really, really hard worker, and he was just passionate to go, I'm not going to live the same life. I'm not going to raise my family that way. Not that there was anything wrong. It's just, I grew up and he was very motivated. And so he actually got invited on a hunt and went on a mule deer hunt and injured a mule deer. And it was either him or somebody on the hunt, injured the mule deer, and I believe didn't recover it or spent all night, just had one of those nights that we all love as hunters.
It's the downside of the whole thing.
And he laid awake that night dreaming of how to make bullets go faster. Because as much as he knew about physics, he knew that speed had something to do with energy. And so what he started doing was actually, even though we're known for firearms, the start of it was the Magnum, and it was ammunition, and it was speed, and it was a quicker, more humane kill. Oh. It didn't necessarily have to do with distance as much, because obviously optics back then aren't what they are today. Yep. Although it was pushing it further, not to distances that we do today, obviously. But it was really about, at the time, he felt a lot of slow, heavy bullets moving out there, and he just felt that providing more of a shock with a burst of energy upon impact for that animal would provide for a quicker, more humane kill. That's how it started. It started with him tinkering in his garage. And so he would take existing cases, and he came up kind of basically, at the time, it was the belted Magnum and then his rounded shoulders, which he called the Venturi shoulder, and started to come up and drop different ways to get bullets moving faster and get more case capacity, kind of like you hear about, with Ackley, similar thing. And then he started chambering barrels for what ended up being in the early 40s, for what ended up being his early ones, like the 270 Weatherby, 300 Weatherby, 257. And then fire forming the cases. If you're not familiar with ballistics, obviously you are, but others, he would shoot it with not a rounded shoulder and not the same size, and the brass would form, to the chamber in the barrel. And so that's really how he started, was by doing that at the very beginning.
And so he wasn't in a lab, an engineering degree under his belt in a lab messing around with this stuff. He was selling insurance and messing around in a garage at night.
Grew up as he would shoot crows for like a nickel in Kansas, and that's his love for the outdoors. So no, this was all in his head to get. It started out with speed, what he called ballistic superiority, which obviously you can then push out further. It means you're bucking wind better. It means there's less drop on the bullet, and then it means there's just more energy carried out further. And so that was the kind of the whole thing for how he started. And so he actually wrote a letter to Sports Afield, to a letter to the editor that got in the magazine, and those letters to the editors started to get where he started to get this following, and people would write him letters. Hey, can you custom make me a gun? And then it went from there into these ornate custom stocks, and he took kind of this Southern California, type of thing, and really made that Monte Carlo cheek piece, and then what ended up being that, the diamond inland, the grip cap, and the rosewood forend, and all those things that we were talking about today in the tour out here in our shop that were synonymous to Weatherby. And he would use other people's actions at the time before he came out with the Mark V in 1958. He would use primarily Mausers, but different actions to kind of do that. But he didn't have a dollar started. He actually sold Grandma's family farm out there for not a lot of money. When I say the farm, like her little section of some land in rural Kansas in the 40s. Sold that, tried to get some business partners. Then here's what's crazy. People talk about California. Well, he leveraged the influential crowd out there. So pretty soon, John Wayne's coming into his shop, Roy Rogers, Gary Cooper. So all those guys are coming in. He's custom making guns. He doesn't have a dollar, to save his life with. But being in California, when I talk about a rich history, it doesn't represent our future. Wyoming does, certainly.
Yes.
But there was a rich history with that past of, when you talk about influencers, right, in our space and media, he had the original influencers. They weren't, they were just movie stars that shot his stuff. And so that's a bit of how it started.
It's neat. You walk through you guys' gun room, and there's photos of your grandfather with all those people, and you go, wow. And it's really neat. I think the story is really neat, knowing that he was just doing this out of his garage, and these guys are come in there thinking that they found the new cool place to hang out. To be, I got a Weatherby, it's custom built, all that stuff. And to now think, how many years later, 80?
78, almost 80, a couple
80 years later, that you're the same brand. You're the brand that people go, I have a 257 Weatherby. You're kidding me. I mean, it's still the same brand.
What's cool is, I always say, in about that first 15 years, I would say up till 1960, my grandfather really, the foundation of a prestigious brand was set. Here we are 78 years later, we've been building on that foundation. He did so much in the 50s. He did all these trips to Africa. He would come back and he'd test out his rounds on animals. He went over there and would do these old reels and things. My dad still has these old kind of video things over there. He'd record his journal on a dictaphone or whatever.
Oh my gosh.
He'd come back and get people in a big hall or a forum and tell his old hunting stories. Then he created the Weatherby Award, which I know you're familiar with, the Big Game
GSE.
Award. And I'm saying it off of 56, it was in the late 50s. I'm going to say 56, but somebody fact checks me. I may be a year or two off. I want to say it was 56. He started that. I think it was the second year. Again, fact check me on that. But Jack O'Connor won it.
Yep.
And so there were these different people. And so even that, what started as that was an opportunity for him. He started that. It was all part of the brand building. Do you know what I mean? So he did that to honor these hunters, but pretty soon all these people are coming to this dinner and, presidents of the U.S. and movie stars are there and all these things. So here's the thing about my grandpa. He was an innovator, true innovator, tinkerer, tried to solve a problem and do things, and a genius marketer. If he was only one or the other without money, he would have never built the brand. But he was truly both. There's a lot of guys that can tinker and build stuff and can't sell anything to save their life. There's a lot of guys who can sell things and have nothing to sell.
Yeah.
He was both.
He was
that's
a
what made
unicorn.
him unique. He was.
Absolute unicorn. That's amazing. So let's fast forward. In the 60s, he was doing this. And your dad took over in the 80s?
Yeah.
Was it a transition, like a planned transition?
It was in the early 80s. My grandpa ended up passing away in 1988. My dad was the youngest, and my grandpa had kids a little older. So where my dad and I are closer in age than my dad and grandfather were.
Okay.
And so, my dad had, of course, worked there all but 2 years of his whole life, like most family businesses, sweeping the shop floors and loading ammo. And, he's always talking about, man, they're worried about lead now. You couldn't even see my fingers after a day's worth of loading ammo back in the day. So he, spent a lot of time doing that. Officially took over in the early 80s as president or whatever. And then my grandpa died in heart surgery in 1988. And so then I officially took over as president or CEO in 2017.
Okay.
So,
So your dad took this this brand, moved it to San Luis Obispo County, continued the brand, continued that. What what are some of the things that the audience would know? Go, oh, I remember that. I remember when Weatherby did this or when Weatherby did that with that time frame. Can you think of some
maybe the 80s?
Yeah, in the 80s.
Yeah, I think, like
90s.
I said, the first synthetic stocks, and we had our fiber mark and started coming out with some things like that.
Yep.
We started doing more and more shotguns as well, where we were always known for our rifles, and so we did start doing a lot more shotguns. We had a big run at some really good over and unders we did for a long time, different things. Most of the cartridge development. So I think today we have 16 Weatherby cartridges. The late 80s, my dad did the 416 and probably 88 or 89. Went over to Africa with Craig Bonington, did a hunt and a film. It's on VHS if you want to go rent it.
From Blockbuster.
And in the 90s, he actually in the 90s moved our Mark V manufacturing back to the States. A lot of people remember that because it was Germany in the 60s, Japan in the 70s and 80s. My dad really wanted to get it back to the U.S.
Yes.
So he moved it back to the U.S. in the 90s. Neck down the 378 to both the 30 378 and 338 378 in the 90s. So those were some of the things then. But a lot of moving the Mark V back was kind of this moment of like, okay, good, we have the iconic U.S. brand Weatherby making their core product over here again.
Yeah, the 3378 Weatherby was the first Weatherby I'd ever shot, and
Started big.
That's actually because my brother, he's 6 years older than me, and he decided that when he hit something, he wanted it to fall over, and it does.
It does that.
It does, and
Yes.
it's very heavy to pack around in the backcountry, though. I will tell you that.
It is.
Probably why 20 years later I have knee problems. So one of the things that we were talking about on our way over the mountain, for those that don't know, my company is on one side of the Bighorn Mountains, and Adam's company is on the other side of the Bighorn Mountains. It's a nice 3.5 hour drive. It's a beautiful drive over here today, and a nice spring day, 70 degrees, first
Finally.
above 40 we've had pretty much. We were talking about this, that you guys had the 300 Weatherby that could easily and was very accurate out beyond 600 yards, but it was pointless because there wasn't optics that could actually do it.
Of course.
Is that an accurate statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think at the time, it was more about energy and killing power and less about distance back in the day.
Okay.
I think as the optic technology has evolved, then obviously distance comes more into it,
Right.
Because you're totally right. I mean, the 257 Weatherby, it's the flattest shooting and all those things. Now, really what it did is it let a lot of hunters back in the day just aim dead on out further or a few inches high, with your odd 6.
Yeah.
You're just like, okay, 1.5 feet over the back, back in the day, Kentucky windage, right? And so that's how they were aiming, where I think the whole thing was like, you can still aim right on the fur and hit the thing,
So I can't even see that far.
Right. So there was a lot of that, I think, that was taking place back in the day more, where now we got apps and Bluetooth and all the different things that go into it. But that really, it was further, but it was because I don't feel like aiming that high on the animal.
Yeah.
So
transitioning to you in 2017, you took over. Was this a plan? Was this like, okay, I'm growing, your dad's going, okay, Adam's going to come up, because you have siblings. So Adam's going to come up, and at this point, he's going to be transitioned into this just like your dad did.
No, I don't know how your family business went, but I think most of them are more just kind of flying by the seat of your
Oh, yeah,
pants most
we
days.
shoot from the hip every day.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We selling the family farm or holding on to it?
I don't know. Crop's good this year.
Yeah.
Let's hold on one more year.
That's right. Yeah. No, here's the deal. My grandfather, because the business was so much to him, coming from nothing, and the sacrifices and hard work that he put in, my dad didn't have an option. Let's just say that, right? My dad did not have an option. So my dad had 2 older sisters. So when little Eddie came out, then
That's it.
Here it is. This guy's taking this thing, right? And so I think one of the things is with my dad is the way that he raised us. I'm the oldest of 4. There's 2 boys, 2 girls. I'm the oldest of 4. And the way that he raised us was definitely different than the way he was raised from my grandpa. And I'm not saying one's right or one's wrong, is different. And so the way that my dad raised us was a lot more of, I'm going to support you and what God's calling you to do with your life. You got one life to live, and I'm not going to choose it for you.
Ah, nice.
And so he was more that kind of father. So there wasn't a lot of pressure in that. There was opportunity, and he was there to support and do those things, but not maybe as much pressure as he grew up under.
Okay.
And I think, it depends on the business, depends on the people. Sometimes if you have too much pressure, then somebody goes into something, they might not be good at it, skilled at it, or passionate about it, but they do it anyways. And so, I think you mentioned at the beginning, so I actually went into full-time Christian ministry for a number of years, over a decade.
Wow.
That I left the family business. So Brenda and I got married. We were high school sweethearts, kind of our story, together since we were 14.
I did not know that.
And so we kind of first love.
You guys have been married like 10 years, something like that?
Mm-hmm. 27 maybe. Oh. And so, so anyways, I was in the family business while finishing college and doing all those things for, into my early 20s, late teens and early 20s. And doing that and working in a variety of departments, just was going through the working departments and learn all the different things, kind of heading in that direction. But it's funny, I think the way that I'm wired is I do need to do something I'm passionate about. And at the time, I think because I just grew up with it, just being there all the time. And I think like a lot of people in family businesses, some do and some don't. I was doing a lot of work at church and youth group stuff and preaching and music and just a lot of things that was just filling my soul, like overflowing, right? And so I went and did that full time. I ended up getting a master's in theology. So running a gun company today with a master's in theology. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So I have a lot of questions for you. No,
good. Let's talk. And so I did that and really pursued my passion. I would not trade those years for anything. What I learned, what I got to do, the fulfillment of that, working with people, learning how to work with people, trying to help people, coach people, all those different things, those are life lessons and tools that help you anywhere. And it was, at the end of the day, I love hunting, I love shooting, but it's all about people.
Yeah.
And that's something my dad did raise us with. And so, we were raised in a Christian home, and so both our faith in the Lord and our family, those were real staples and things that my dad did raise us in, and probably more so than the gun side, at the time. And so I went and did that full time, and again, just wouldn't trade it for anything. And so then, obviously, and then my brother and sisters for. One reason that's another story for another day, and I don't want to speak for their stories, but have different thing. My brother's a real craftsman, so he's a custom knife maker.
I did know that,
and
actually.
He's phenomenal.
I've met him. Yeah.
Phenomenal. So he got the craftsman part from my grandpa. I got more of the sales and marketing and talking and business and that stuff. My brother can just make stuff that I'm just in awe of. So it's Dan Weatherby, but D. Weatherby Forge, and he makes beautiful knives. He actually makes them out of he makes his own forgings and everything, and forges our rifle barrels.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No. And so I give him scrap barrels, and he's got he's got a lot of access to cool scrap, let's just say, and hand makes his own sandmine Damascus patterns with different types of metal and steel within the barrels and forges it all down. And so he'll take and custom make things like, let's say you shoot something with a 300. He can take a 300 barrel, put a cartridge case head in one side. He can use antlers from your, so he's really around that hunting side, and it's real high-end. It's beautiful stuff. So he got that craftsman part, but at the end of the day, being here, it's like, he's like, man, I don't want to show up work every day. I just want to run a big operation. That's not for me. I just want to be at my shop hammering on steel. That's my brother. So we're all wired in different ways, where I had the wiring where this just fit me. So I came talking a lot, but I guess long story, and then I'll stop here.
No. This is what this is
they
about.
They can hear you all the time, Ike.
I know. That's my story's on YouTube. No.
So my dad, so in about 2013, my dad was not getting younger and we were looking at that next generation type. And I'm just the type, I get up every day and my heart beats for whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm passionate about it. And so we started to have some serious chats around 13. Every couple of years before that, we'd have a chat. I'm like, Dad, this is This is what I need to be doing, when I need to be doing it, and how I need to be doing it. And so, so I was doing that, and he came to me, and it was around in 2013 where I just started to go, wait a minute, like I'm the one of the kind of the 4 kids that probably this makes most sense with, and certainly don't have all the skill sets, but I think I could learn the rest of them to really kind of take this into the next generation. And I knew at the time, I knew I had skills in leadership or communication or casting a vision for things, the leadership part.
Yep.
And I knew if I could build a good team and help assemble a good team that are experts in engineering or gunsmithing or machining or accounting or marketing or sales,
Logistics,
all of the things, and trust those people, then I think we could do some fun things. And so I decided in the beginning of 2014, just to come back. And when I come into something, it's usually not half throttle. So I just came in just running. For those that wonder, there's nothing bad in the church world, those different things like, oh, he must have cheated on his wife and got 3 new ones and, done something to disqualify.
last name's not Baker.
Sorry. We actually planted a church out here in Sheridan. I just preached on Easter at our church.
That's awesome.
And so still actively involved in those things. I don't get a paycheck for it. And it's do that in my spare time when I'm not running a gun company. So it's still really important to me. I still do a lot of that stuff. But this is where you'll find me most every day here at this factory.
So you talked about church and talked about the gun company. So you decided in 2017, we have got to get out of California. Mm-hmm. This is not a place to manufacture, sell, or live as a gun manufacturer. And through a process which we've talked about, you decided to move to Wyoming. The funny thing that I didn't know until today that you mentioned is you moved a company, hired X amount of employees, built a house, built a building, and started a church in 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
and my wife didn't leave me. So,
in fact, actually, you say that. Brenda, your wife, is an amazing person,
yeah.
And I don't know her real well, but what I do know, and I've been around her a little bit. What I do know is you guys work beautifully. You were talking about teams and how each individual team. I think one of the best things that I've seen about this organization is you and your wife's team, and how you have the ability to play on her strengths and her on yours. I do the same. I've been married 25 years, and my wife is my yin to my yang. She is everything I'm not, and it's beautiful. So what is her involvement? Obviously, you couldn't have done all of that by yourself. My gosh, you would have. I don't know how. I don't know. Probably not even possible to do all that in a 2-year period by yourself.
Right.
So let's talk about that. How did that transition happen? What are some of the things that people at home can go, yeah, I need to do this better? Or how did you guys navigate that chaos, basically?
Sure. It's a good question. It's a loaded question for sure, because it was a very long, arduous couple years. I think knowing it was time to get out of California and the writing was on the wall, and again knowing we could stay around here and probably just die a long, slow, painful death, or we can go and let's just shoot for the stars. And we knew going from California to Wyoming was going to do that. And so we kind of knew if we were going to do it, it had to be an all-in thing. Obviously, needed her support, desperately, and on the things. The beauty is sometimes you get in a partnership, whether it's in business or in this case in a marriage, it's more than a partnership.
Yes.
that it's we do play to each other's strengths heavily, and so the divvying up and allocating responsibilities just comes real easy in regards to that. And so so she, like I mentioned, she's on the people side. She's got her master's in organizational leadership. So she's really gifted administrational, type of stuff. So whether it was all the building, all the employee, we had for our first 50 job openings, we had 3,500 applicants.
Oh my gosh.
And she oversees HR. And so all of those things, we still apologize. If you applied in the first 6 months, like you might have had a bad process and maybe nobody got back to you, and we're sorry, because we just couldn't handle it all. And so she does that, compliance, all the not fun things for me, but really all that kind of stuff. She's really good at. And so I still had to run it's not like we were going to close down for 2 years.
Right.
So we still had to innovate, come out with a new product. We still had to sell stuff, market stuff, build stuff, get suppliers. There's a whole business side there to do. And so I just had to trust her. If I would have pulled off too much and said, I need to be in more of these building meetings, then the business needed my direction of leadership at the time, and I had to be there. And so there has to be a real strong mutual trust during that time.
Yeah.
We did have a handful of more than a handful, but some people that moved with us, and we fortunately had some really good people who had some tenure here that came with us, even though we lost 80-90%. The ones that came just really knew us well, knew our product well, had that kind of a tribal knowledge, if you would. So that was helpful. I'd hired a year or two before that a new CFO. He was key in it. And then during that time, our first set of hires right when we were moving with a lot of leadership positions are still here. So like Luke, who oversees sales, product, and marketing, there were a lot of those people, and we just got some people that we sold them. And here's the deal. When we sold this thing, we said, this is going to be really hard. Like, we're going to be like a 75-year-old startup that's using all our money to get out of California and move here. You're going to have to move to the podunk middle of nowhere, freezing cold winters, amazing hunting, and amazing outdoors. But we're like, this is what you're going to have to do for the promise of a prestigious 75-year-old brand that we believe has a future. And I felt like I was selling like a venture capital startup in like Silicon Valley or something, trying to like talk people into it. But I said, there's going to be days where it's going to suck, and you're going to have to do things that are way out of your job description. Like we always joke on job description, says other duties as assigned.
Why is that one bold?
Right. I always tell Mac, our film guy, when he's helping me pack out animals, I'm like, yep, other duties as assigned. But there was a lot of other duties as assigned for that first year or two. So those that came on during that time got to be through a painful period of a move and shutting down, production, moving everything over here, hiring up new people. But those that are still around that have been here for that 4 to 5 year period, they're like bought in, because when you endure things during the challenging times, then the good times like seem so much better. It's just like a grueling hunt when you come out and you tag that animal at the end and you have to pack it out and there's a lot of work and the weather was bad. At the end, if it's not miserable, it's not memorable.
Yep.
And the same's true with when we moved this business. And so a lot of people that are now here have seen this chapter 3 begin. We talk about kind of under the first, second, and third generation. Yes. They've been a part of that rebuilding of the brand. And I think we've taken some market share. We've come out with some great product. There's a lot of things we've done in manufacturing that you saw today as I gave you an updated tour since you hadn't been here in a bit. All of those things are things we're all really, really proud of here collectively as a team. So where it was sure just Brenda and I that had to look each other in our eyes and go, I don't know who else is moving. But at the end of the day, we were blessed to have an incredible team. Some come with us and some that came on right that we could not. When you say I couldn't have done it without her and she couldn't have done it without me, if God wouldn't have assembled this team right at the beginning, we would have never been able to do it.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. So, you talk about the third chapter. You guys, we walked through that plant today, and it's an amazing facility. And I was fortunate enough that I walked through your plant in California, and then, of course, the grand opening, and not everything was set up then, and you weren't in full production yet. And then today, walking through this plant, it is absolutely astonishing where you guys have come from in this third chapter, and in a very short time, really. 5 years. We're sitting here on the 5th anniversary of breaking ground for this and for this building, and it is amazing how far you've gone. Let's talk a little bit about some of the innovation, some of the stuff that you want to discuss that's exciting here, besides just the brand, besides the people, all that, absolutely. But what are some of the things that guys at home go, oh my gosh, they're really innovating. They're really changing. They're taking that next step. What are some of those things?
Sure. No, absolutely. That's what's been fun is when we had to have and I reckoned it, we're both pilots.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I use flying analogies a lot. People always make fun of me about it, right? But I feel like we had the plane in California. It was this brand. We didn't have fuel.
Yeah.
The plane wasn't full. We didn't know where we were going, right? All those things. We came here. We fueled up the plane. We got the right, the people on board. We had a lot of great people in California. We've had a lot of really good people here. And then with that, we were able to finally go. And when I talk about that foundation that my grandfather and father set before me, I was able, like, all the money in the world couldn't have built what happened in those 75 years. Mm-hmm. The foundation was there. It's not meaning to go tell outdoorsmen who we were.
Right.
It was a what do you say, a family or a home name?
It was a family name.
Yeah. And so household name, right?
Oh,
That's
right.
what you said.
I
Yeah.
see.
And so that was there, but by getting out of California, we were able to finally kind of take that next step forward. So part of that was going to be through innovating and come out with new product. Part of that was by bringing some more things in-house that we'd traditionally outsourced and had more control over. By doing that and moving here, we brought a lot of things in-house, that you saw today, whether it be machining or carbon fiber, or a lot of different things that we're doing. By doing that, we've learned a lot. And so we can adapt and change. If in a season of hunting with something, we come back and have feedback, we can make those changes because we know more intimately the construction, how it's made, the tolerances, what all can change within that product to get it to that kind of next step. And so I think that's what's been exciting from a big standpoint, without talking about a specific product, is being able to make change quicker here. We can walk out on the shop floor, and because we're doing so many things here, we can do that. We're loading most all our own ammo here in-house. And so our load development side, we brought in a lot of new cool bullets the last couple years too, and are starting to do things and test different things. And, so we're able to do that. Our carbon fiber stocks, I think, is a great example that we set out to build the lightest, strongest stock. So the Peak 44 stock that we were part of developing is just, it's a phenomenal stock, and we're just super proud of it, that it's 20 ounces and can withhold several thousand rounds of a Magnum Weatherby cartridge.
That's amazing.
That was from a blank sheet of paper from our team here.
And 22 ounces.
20.
20 ounces.
20.
Gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. A regular stock, like one of your wood stocks, same size, how much does that weigh?
Shoot, I haven't weighed a wood one in a long time, so I'm going to probably say it and get it wrong.
But that's okay.
But I don't know, 36, 40?
It's got to be. Yeah. So it's half probably.
Yeah.
It's half the weight.
Yeah.
Half the weight, and then you fluted barrels and all this stuff. You guys are building. Your lightweight mountain hunter is an unbelievable feat.
It's 4.9 pounds. The backcountry titanium and our 6-lug action, which with the 6.5 RPM we can have Magnum performance out of. And that was what was cool. That was one of our first big things once we moved here that was fun. We're all kind of backcountry hunters.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of backcountry hunters, they want to shed the weight, so they sacrifice the ballistic part.
Yep.
Well, that's in our blood. So so when we set out to do that, I said, I want to build the combination of the lightest and fastest. There's light and there's fast. Those two often don't go hand in hand.
Yes. And
so somebody's like, I got a super lightweight rifle. And it's like, you shoot it not very far and it's not very big.
Right.
So we did some cartridge development because that's kind of our core DNA.
Yep.
So when we developed the RPM, Rebated Precision Magnum series, starting with 6.5 and then the 338, we developed that around our small Mark V, our 6-lug, which is long and skinny. It's not a traditional short and long. Our Mark V is weird. They're both long, and it's kind of skinny and fat.
Yeah.
There's a pound difference between the two. So we set out and developed to maximize the cartridge potential of that space. So it has a rebated rim, so it can fit in there. If it had a belt on, it wouldn't fit.
Okay.
Then we said it's long and skinny. So for those that know stuff, the 284, the 6.5 284, it's longer than that. So it's its own parent case.
Okay.
So it's basically like a 284 that's stretched with more brass on it with a rebated rim. And so we made that and said we want Magnum performance, and the goal was out of a 5-pound rifle. So you could get at the time a 5-pounder and at a high-end production price. So I'm not talking a $9,000 custom ultra lightweight you can get out there. I'm talking something for more in the, when you get all the way up to the top, we're into the 3s, but a lot of them's in the 2s, and stuff like that, price-wise. And so we said, which is high-end production, I get that. So then we said, let's simultaneously, we're doing the development on the ammo, and because of us being able to do that here, we were doing cartridge development and you can't really make prototype brass. So, I mean, it was, we had to take a bet if this thing was going to work and make several 100,000 pieces of brass to see if it was going to work. When we developed it, then we developed the gun, and eventually even that stock came out of that whole thing too. We started working with titanium, which we're now machining in-house too. So we're machining titanium in-house. We're building carbon fiber stocks from scratch in-house. So we're able to do all those things. We did the first 3D printed recoil pad, had a couple of iterations of that. The first ones performed well, but it had some storage issues where when you'd store it, it'd get a little dented because it had memory to it, which was why it helped with recoil, but then it helped kind of get that. So we did a couple iterations. So, right now we have a 4.9 pound backcountry rifle that is at a 24-inch barrel. So a lot of other people go back to 18 to 20 to shave the weight. Because again, I know the shorter barrels, and we're making things in that, but you do sacrifice velocity in a mag and cartridge when you take away barrel. So a full 24-inch, 6.5 RPM, that's going, 400 to 500 feet per second, faster than a 6.5 Creedmoor. And we put it then in our 338 RPM, which Dana shot her bison. My daughter shot her bison with this last year. I've shot elk, moose with myself, bear. So you can have a 5-pound gun that's got 338 Win Mag performance. Wow. Which then people go, what about the recoil? And I always go, ask my wife and daughter. They've been hunting with it for 2 seasons, and they seem to be fine. But anyways, that's it's fun because that's part of Wyoming. We got the steep bighorns right here. And that gives us kind of like my grandpa did with that injured animal. Like, I'm going up there going, I want to take a real flat shooting round, but I don't want to pack around a big 8.5-pound rifle. Yes. And so it's the Wyoming combined with their innovation in products and ballistics. Like, that's an example of how people go, wait, why do we need another 6.5? And we came out with RPM. And I'm like, well, it's purpose driven. And for this action, for these things. And so it's niche and it's smaller, and I get that, and it's not for everybody, and that's fine. I love it, and our people here love it, and people that grasp it, that get it, are loving it. And that's one little kind of small segment of, an example.
So one of the things that I was really impressed about, Adam, walking through the plant and watching, not only just watching your excitement about all the things that are happening and all the new things and all the, innovation, and we can shave 2 minutes off of this, and we can, shave 2 ounces off that, is the constant innovation. You're constantly looking, saying, we got to do this better, which now, knowing the story, comes from your grandfather, who was trying to constantly make something better. What are some of the things, you talk about the carbon barrel, or the carbon stock. You guys have a carbon barrel. You have titanium. What could be next? I mean, it seems like you're hitting all cylinders, and you're hitting everything with a range of prices, all the way up, from that out of the box all the way up to the 3,000. I guess, is it just more? Can you expand more? What's next?
Yeah. Well, I can't fully answer that, but we have a long list of what's next, but I just can't tell you.
But there is.
As long as the record button is on. But there always is. And, I think what's neat is a bit of our sweet spot is what we'd like to do is kind of offer maybe what guys are doing in the custom world, but at an upper end production price.
Okay.
That tends to be a lot of our sweet spot. And so whether that's for long range, whether that's for backcountry or different specific things, that tends to be where we do really well, where a brand people know and recognize, and they assimilate it with quality. But at the same time, it's not an $8,000 to $12,000 custom build that a lot of guys would love to own those guns, and they'd get divorced the day they bought it, and so they can't. So we tend to take those things. I think what we're really good at is finding what people are really want to spend their money on, features that are really important to them, and putting it in a package that's a fraction of that. And so that tends to be even in that $2,500 range. We sell a lot of rifles in that space. Some people would say, wow, that's real expensive. Well, the guy buying the $10,000 gun thinks, well, it's a quarter of the price. There was an example of this. It was at Sheep Show a couple years ago, and we had somebody in our booth, and they came up and ended up grabbing one of our backcountry guns. It was a 5-pound version, and then went over the ballistics. And the guy set it down and goes, I'll be right back. We go, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to go cancel my order down the road with that custom gun builder because it's 3 times as expensive and this does more than that does.
Oh my gosh.
So he did. And he came back and bought ours. And so that tends to be where we're at. So there is, when you ask that question, there's the cutting edge technology and what's next. And we are certainly going down different spaces. It's also the cost part for the customer. And so the more we do here, part of the innovation is not necessarily what the end product is, but how it's built. And so if we can make it differently or better or more efficiently, we can allow more customers to appreciate and own that technology or innovation, if that makes sense. And so that's what we're trying to get really good at here, is bringing the performance and value that somebody would expect maybe out of a custom gun in there. Even our Vanguard line, we sell a lot of Vanguards in the higher price point for Vanguard because they see more features that are on there.
You have a carbon stock on your Vanguards.
Exactly.
It's a $1,500 gun.
Right.
That has a lot of traits that guys are looking for.
Right.
In $1,500.
Vanguard Talon's got a spiral fluted barrel and Cerakote and a threaded barrel and a carbon fiber stock and all those different things. And so, we sold, I'm like, guys aren't going to want to pay that much for Vanguard. We sold a surprising amount of those this year already. And so we're finding those sweet spots to be able to allow more customers to appreciate and really buy into that technology and innovation and what those different things are. And so that's something that drives us as well. Now, at the same time, we're trying to do things new and different and better. Like when we built that carbon fiber stock, it was, let's not go knock something off. It was literally, let's start from the ground up.
And you didn't even start from the ground up inside the hunting industry. You went outside the industry.
We went to some aerospace consultants, to figure out how to work with carbon fiber.
If you can make airplanes that the wings don't fall off, we can make
stocks that hold up to some recoil.
Yeah.
So we did that. So it's fun to be able to kind of dabble in all those different things. So on the manufacturing end and with our manufacturing engineers and design, all our different engineers and our machinists, it's really a collaborative effort. So it's a win for everybody when we come up and can find out how to use maybe a new technology in rifles, or we can find out how to build things better, faster. All of that helps the end user
more comfortable.
That they step into that. And so that's what we've been able to do the last few years, and certainly what we plan to do the next few years as well.
So a couple things for those of that are new to hunting, what are some of the, what are your most popular, because you guys are unique, I think, correct if I'm wrong, but you guys are unique in the sense that you have your own calibers and you're the only ones that make those calibers in rifles, right? No one else makes it.
Anybody can. Custom gun builders will.
Yes.
At times production gun companies have. But we make the lion's share of rifles in our cartridges. 257, Weatherby 300. Now, as far as ammo, we make ammo for all of it. But like Hornady and Federal and Nosler and other folks sell the more popular ones. There's no volume there in the more real niche ones. The 460 Weatherby, not a lot of people are loading other than us, like nobody, I don't think. But you can find ammo and other things because, we have 75 years of guns out there. There's a lot of guns out there, that need that ammo, so other people are making it. But we do sell a lot of rifles in non-Weatherby. We sell a lot of 6.5 Creedmoors and 6.5 PRCs and 300 Win Mags and a whole bunch of different things too. So we do sell a lot of rifles in those. Because of our brass and the way that it's made and the bullets that we use and the velocities and different things, we aren't the cheapest ammo on the block. You pay for your speed.
Yep.
And so some people want that. They're kind of like when people go, oh yeah, and it burns out barrels, blah, blah. It's like, well, you want to go fast. You don't buy a Ferrari because you don't care about your tires burning out. Like you want to go fast and you want that performance. But we have a lot of things in standard cartridges that we sell a surprising amount into for those guys that are just real practical and want to go plink more and not pay as much for ammo. So we have both.
And you have a custom gun shop. That's the other thing that I knew about, but I forgot, just walking through there. You have how many guys working in the custom gun shop where they're doing warranty work or they're doing upgrades or they're doing, custom,
Sure.
I want to build this rifle that you don't build on the assembly line, but they can build it for you, right?
Yeah, our online custom configurators got really popular. We're all kind of like that. We all, how many times have you built like a truck or the a plane, something online, and you click and you're like, what's my color scheme? And you know what I'm saying? Oh, I want the bigger tires, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you do that. So so we brought that, and other folks are doing that as well. But, from a volume perspective, it's not very many guns in comparison to the bulk stuff we do at retail, but which is our bread and butter. But it's fun to be able to do. So guys are picking, they can two-tone their barrel where, the barrel color and the flutes are different or the brakes different. And some things guys build in their camo because we dip all the guns and the size of your bolt knob and the trigger. Do you want it rounded or, the trigger shoe, or do you want it flat-faced? And so there's all these different things in your type of stock. And so it's fun. Sometimes they come out and it'll be good ideas for us to go, that'd be sweet in production. And then occasionally one will come out and we'll go, oh, that does not work. And the gunsmith will go, this is what they ordered. You sure you want me to ship it?
You call them up and go, I want to send you a photo. Are you sure this is what you want?
You can see the picture when you build it. Most of the time, though, we sometimes get ideas and go, ooh, that customer really did that well.
Awesome.
So it's kind of fun. So our custom configurator and gun builder part has actually been real big. And then, like you said, we service, we have a full-time customer service team here. We service several hundred phone calls a week, every week. Make sure you're calling Weatherby, how can I help you? And it may be, where do I buy a gun? And you direct them to a retailer, to, a quality problem, to I inherited this gun, what the heck do I do now? I mean, you get everything, Yeah. And so we do that, and then our gunsmiths are pretty busy with that as well. But.
So let me talk about the industry. So you obviously are very entrenched in not only the hunting industry and the firearms industry, but also in 2A and all of the other stuff. What are some of the things from a gun manufacturer standpoint that the average Joe needs to be paying attention to? Since you're entrenched in this every single day, what are some of the things that are, from your perspective, scary? Or that these guys go, you need to call your congressman and tell them about this?
Sure. Yeah, there's things that people definitely don't realize. That's for sure. I think there are 2A organizations, industry organizations that are out there, I think, trying to educate, people about it. Of course, from state to state, there's different things. The federal level, there's going to be something different. A lot of what we've seen the last couple years that I don't know how much of the public knows about or not is what we call discrimination. It's been years now. I can't pay to advertise on Facebook.
Right.
Haven't, for years. Because at the end, if your brand, like if you can buy a firearm through it, so you can't boost a video. I can get 10 times the amount of views on a video of a product. We haven't been able to do that for, 6-7 years?
Yeah, probably.
Something like
Maybe
that.
Longer than that.
So there's... on the whole social media and YouTube, all the different channels, there's just heavy, we get kind of penalties, if you would, of things we're not allowed to do. And then in the last couple years, it's come where there's been banking things within the industry. NSSF has done a good lead on anti-discrimination from a banking level. And hey, if I make a legal product, you should be able to finance me. And so there's been a lot that are kind of on that naughty list. And so where pretty soon, you have the banking discrimination. This last year or two, we've seen a lot in the freight side of things. Mm-hmm. That's getting a little bit heavy. Pretty soon, if you can't ship and receive your legally, constitutionally protected goods, that becomes a problem as well. Some of it was international, some of it was to Canada. There's some different things. But
I didn't know that.
Certain carriers, we had to switch carriers into Canada,
really?
More than once, just to get goods there. So there are... more and more things with just general carriers that can come down on it. We've had on the internet, web hosting, credit card processing. There are discrimination things in all of those areas too, as if we're child trafficking or something. Like we're, again, making a constitutionally, legally protected item and trying to do commerce in that way. We were going to go with one customer management tool online, a CRM, and they came out that no gun companies had to switch midstream, go with somebody else. So there's a lot of that I don't think, because it's not the consumer side. Most times people know, wait, are you trying to restrict the guns I can buy, the type of gun and all those things, which I think most people are generally aware of. You just flip through a few things and find those on the right news channels or social media feeds. But there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's taking place that's pretty scary, because you can say, well, like for our products, we don't make pistols, we don't make high capacity things, right. ARs. So we've been further away from those items, but some of those other things have impacted us pretty directly. And so, you have to start interviewing. If we want to go with a new bank, it's like, okay, cool. I need to see in writing that you're not going to kick me to the curb a year from now,
right.
or a new
call my loans.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's funny you bring that up. Recently, we've been having trouble as a hunting company. We've been having trouble with a certain type of credit card. People want to subscribe to our elite membership or just a regular subscription, and MasterCard, they would constantly decline it. This is really weird. They change a card, it'd work fine. It just came to our attention about 3 weeks ago that MasterCard put us underneath. It's a gun company because we hunt. And so if those people out there that are using MasterCards, if they any way, shape, or form think you're involved in firearms, they will not let you purchase that product with their
I hadn't
card.
heard that.
It was dumbfounding to me. But that's crazy that it's happening with simple things like programs. CRM, that's a program used for sales forces.
Correct.
They're discriminating against.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that. I don't think that reaches maybe as many people. Us in the industry are pretty aware about it because it affects our day-to-day business. Yeah. But those are just general freedoms that are really under attack. Of course, there's the, what products and all those things. Again, those are typically more in the news about, well, we'll ban this sort of product or that sort of product. But if you can't ship goods at a certain point, if you can't finance your manufacturing at a certain point, that's when it gets a little bit scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not to be crazy. A Debbie Downer on it, but
no, that's things that guys don't think about.
Living in.
Yeah, things that an average Joe's not thinking about. That you guys are in a unique situation in the sense that you're one of the only, probably the only manufacturer that has to ship your goods to a dealer, and the dealer has to do all the work, has to do all the sales. And you could order a car online; they'll deliver it.
Yeah,
now. It's
we're regulated. We're it's got to go to an FFL holder. Yeah. So.
So here's a couple questions I have that I ask everybody, and it's kind of just a dive into, who Adam is, and not just who you are as a person, but how you grew up, corporate culture, family culture, who Adam is. And you talked briefly about your faith, and I know that you're extremely strong in your faith, which is awesome. So this question will be easy for you, because I'm sure you thought about it a bunch. What are you going to be thinking about on your deathbed? What is going to be important to you? God willing, you get the opportunity to be thinking about it, and it's not a proverbial bus.
Yes.
What are you going to be thinking about?
Yeah. If you are, again, if it's not an accident, if it's not one of those things, if you get that opportunity, I don't know if you'd call it an opportunity.
I don't know.
The great privilege of living a long, slow, dying death.
Privilege of suffering. Perfect.
I think it's a look back on my life. I think it's about legacy. It's about stewardship. The preacher part of me's got to bring in the passage of Scripture, that parable of the talents, where we've each been given something. And I think about my relationships, my family, finances. I think about this business. I was given the opportunity to steward this business. I didn't start it. Yep. This was a gift isn't the right word because that's not the way it transpired. But you know what I mean with family legacy. But it's truly, did I steward the things that were given me? Was I wise with my investments? I don't mean financial investments. I mean with my time. With who I am, and with my skills and who I am. And so obviously that would play into my relationships with people, in that standpoint with people, first and foremost, my family. Was I wise with my time? I think you always think about those people that get to the end and they just worked and worked and worked and didn't care about the things that were most important to them. And so I think a big part, I was actually speaking at a Wild Sheep Foundation event a couple weeks ago in Minneapolis, and I talked about that and being a good steward. We talk about wildlife conservation and being stewards of this land we've been given. And we use that word stewardship in regards to conservation a lot. And I think those things, but that's important too. I would also look back and hope that I made this world, this earth, a better place, that I didn't just take, but that I gave. And that's in all areas. That's with people. It's even comes down into hunting and all those different things that I would have been a good steward of what I've been given, that I, as we till the soil, as we hunt these lands, as we, go about doing our things, that so that's why, sure, wildlife conservation plays into, that's one part.
Right.
But then it's also, I think, again, back to our resources. Did I give back? Was it just take, or did I give back? And then it comes down ultimately, to our relationship with people. And did I love others the way and to the degree that I should have loved others? Did I love my enemies when I needed to love my enemies? Did I go above and beyond in generosity in areas that I should have gone above and beyond? Those are the types of things. And then, down to my faith, I believe there is life after this one. And so if I'm on my deathbed, I'm thinking of my next life and thinking, did I steward the responsibility that I had? Again, I have a master's in theology. I've studied the Bible a lot. God's gifted me in communication. So that's why this Easter I was up on the stage giving the message. And 2 weeks from now, I'm speaking at a thing down in Missouri about that to a group of men. Because if I really believe that, then that's going to be important to me as well. So I think it's multifaceted, but I'd come down to like stewardship of did I? Because there are times where I just want to go do Adam's thing. And usually Adam's thing is more taking. It doesn't come natural to give. We're inherently selfish human beings, and I am the foremost of those. And so I think at the end it's, did I just take, or what did I do to give?
That's awesome.
I mean, that sounds good. I would hope that's what I'm thinking.
I'm sure it will be, because I think you become very wise at the last moments, in my opinion, and truthful to yourself, really.
Yeah. The people, I won't tell this whole story, but there was a kid when I was a youth pastor, and he got leukemia 4 times.
Oh my gosh!
Elementary school, junior high, and high school. Had bone marrow transplants, chemotherapy, radiation. And he was interning for our church for a pretty big youth ministry program. He was 18, and the doctor told him he got it for the 4th time. And he said, you got 3 months to live, roughly.
Right.
And I remember sitting there. His name was Clayton, and this was 2008, fall of 2008. And he said, doctor told me I got 3 months to live. And he wasn't even 100 pounds. He'd kind of been sick his whole life, but mentally very sharp. And he just said, I want to make the most of every day I have from now to when I die. And I come down and speak at the youth group that night. And kids are always just thinking about their latest gadgets, all their things, the girls they want to hook up with, all the things that kids, teenagers think about. 700 high schoolers came down to this huge building and listened to him speak, and you could hear a pin drop, because he said, here's the difference between me and you. We're going to all die. I just know I'm going to die pretty soon. And so the things that are important to you probably just aren't important to me anymore. And he talked about relationships and all the things that are important, right? And he left. He ended up living 5 months, and I was there the last night of his life, and he was still literally preaching at us to love others. Jeez. And here's what you need to care about. And he ended up in those 5 months to what he could with his health. He lived it to the fullest. And sometimes I think we learn about, when you talk about, he was on his deathbed for 5 months, basically, at 18. And I learned more from that 18-year-old than I've ever learned probably from another human being in my life.
And I'll bet you, when you say lived, it was his last 5 months and he lived it amazingly, it probably wasn't things that he wanted to do. No. It was about building relationships and about maintaining and about trying to get other people to do the same.
Yeah, exactly. And leaving things the best that he could. I mean, he told me that. There was one day we were in the car together. I remember he goes, it pains me to think I'm not going to get married and have a family. That pains me. Mm-hmm. So there was that suffering he was going through in that sense, right? But it's true. He didn't go out and party it up. Yeah. Because, it would mean nothing to him at that point, But he left that legacy, and you can imagine being his mom and dad, knowing that legacy that kid left, and his brother and sister. And so I didn't mean to get too, deep on you there, but you asked a deep question, and I went from him. He was on his deathbed for 5 months, and I got to live it with him. I spent a lot of those days with him, and there are other people who certainly spent more. But I remember just going, wow, this kid is teaching me how to live. Mm-hmm. And it was a cool experience. So
That's amazing.
It was neat. Yeah.
That's
There's still a website. It's called claytonsstory.com. And it's still up, and you can go watch a bunch of videos of him speaking to different groups and doing these videos, like talking during the last 5 months of his life.
That's crazy.
It's pretty powerful. All these, he died in March 16th, 2009. So it's when he passed away. And all these years later, kind of his legacy still lives on. I think, man, that kid lived more last 5 months of his life than some of us will live our entire lives. You know?
And his legacy is continuing to evolve in the sense of changing people's lives every day.
Yeah.
And he hasn't been around in a long time.
Right. And that's probably part of our problem. Sometimes we just live like we're immortal.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, whatever, you know, rather
wasting time and not spending.
Yeah, making the most every opportunity, you know.
Well, that answers the question. The next question I was going to say is, what is one thing that I can learn from Adam? But you just did it. Absolutely. Live through relationships and leave a legacy.
Yeah.
So, and I always like to end on this because this is usually a fun question. The previous question is very deep.
Sure.
And ending on that, you kind of, you know, it's not the way you want to end anything. Talking about death. The question I have is, why do you hunt? Why does Adam hunt? Not why people should hunt, but why do you hunt?
I can answer in several. Can this be a multi-point answer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Be as long as you want.
Sure.
Power doesn't go out this time.
Sure. I think it sounds a little bit funny and cliche, but it's in my blood. Maybe first and foremost. I grew up at a very young age, and my grandpa's African safari animals, taxidermy all around the wall, listening to stories of my grandfather and father. So it was in my blood. I guess just to say that, right? Kind of through the generations, and I'm sure you're nodding your head because you would probably agree.
100%.
And so it's in my blood. I think that it checks off a lot of boxes of things that mean a lot to me or things that I enjoy. When I say that, I mean I love the outdoors and I love the beauty of it. I'll go hike just to hike. If there was never another day to hunt, I would go hike just to crest a mountain and look over and see something breathtaking, or walk along a stream and just listen to it. I would just be outdoors to be outdoors. Because I think we're made to be outdoors. Yeah. We were created in the outdoors. Garden Eden didn't have a TV. Like, we were created to be in the outdoors, and so I think part of me, that's in my blood too, is just to be in the outdoors. Then I think relationally, it teams up. Then when you can combine the outdoors with the people, I mean, sure, I have days I hunt by myself and I love it. Absolutely love it. But I also have times when I took my daughter bison hunting when she drew a once-in-a-lifetime bison tag this last year in Wyoming, and the times that I had with her as a college girl, like, we'll never forget those memories. Yeah. Or the time my son shot his first buck or his first bull elk here in Wyoming a couple years ago. Or those things, countless times with my wife, with our employees, with friends, hunting buddies. So it also provides amazing time with people where you get conversations on a hilltop glassing for 12 hours waiting for the big buck to come out where you think it's going to come out that you don't get anywhere else. I remember times with my dad talking about, things growing up with my dad that a boy should talk about with his dad that we talked about, and it wasn't in the living room. It was in the outdoors, and it was hunting. So it actually brings together people in a really cool way. I like it because it's challenging, and I hunt because it's challenging and there's a reward. We already talked about me moving this business and all of the challenge that came and the different things we did, but to be on the other side makes it so much more enjoyable. So when you go spend, I went moose hunting 3 times, spent probably 28 days moose hunting in the rain and all the different things before I finally tagged a moose, a big Alaskan moose. And that moose, when I was there, meant so much more to me because of the effort and work and challenge that went into it. So anybody that hunts in challenging environments knows that. And so I've done in the fitness room, I've done triathlons. I did that why would you do a triathlon? Because, you hate it. During the middle of it, I go, why would I ever want to do another one of these? And you cross that finish line, you feel, man, the accomplishment, and you go, okay, I'm going to go sign up for my next one. It's a wicked, cruel thing. But So I think that challenge and reward part of it's there. I then hunt because I'm a conservationist. And I believe hunting is conservation. in a variety of ways. It's conservation with funds. I write a healthy check every quarter here as a gun company to the Pittman-Robertson Act that goes towards conservation for federal excise tax. So every time, all those things go into it. My game and fish tags here in Wyoming and other states, go into it. So from a money perspective, it's there, as well as managing herds and predation and all those things go into it. So, and then I become members of these different groups. And so then I go speak about, so I'm a conservationist, so I like to hunt. Then I also hunt because we only pretty much eat wild game. We do not buy beef, and we have 3 freezers full of probably 10 different species right now that we do, and we'll cook for our employees, sometimes big 4th of July barbecue with elk burgers. And so we eat what we kill as much as we can. Certain international environments, there's different things where we don't, but when we can, we do. We process and butcher all our own meat, pretty much ourselves, 90-something% of it, almost everything. We did my daughter's bison the day after Christmas last year, and that was a long day after Christmas. So we enjoy that. My wife enjoys cooking wild game. She's got a little cooking show on YouTube called Wild Flavors. So she enjoys to cook it, and we've learned to grow in that. So hunting to me is that part of it too. And every hunt is different and unique, and I don't like routine. So that fits who I am. Typically, you go out hunting, you never know what's going to happen. And you learn through it, you grow in it. I fail in it. There's not a lot of other things that I've set out to do that I failed in as much as hunting.
Yeah.
And so we learn from our mistakes in hunting. I mean, how many times you've gone to bed and you second guess yourself as a hunter and play Monday morning quarterback? Oh, I should have adjusted for wind more. If I'd have only done this, if I'd have only done that, and you have those things. And so I think we learn a lot. Man, that's probably top 8, 10 reasons, but I could keep going. So
you talked about it's in your blood.
Yeah.
One of the things, do you think that obviously you don't have to have it in your blood in the sense of your parents don't have to hunt to hunt. But do you think so were you talking about tradition? That it's a tradition from your family that passed it down. It's not a bloodthirst. It's not something that's naturally in your.
Tradition.
It's a tradition. It's listening to your father and your grandfather's story, and being there as a 4-year-old kid, going, man, someday I want to go to Africa. Someday I hope to have stories to sit around and tell my kids. That type of stuff. Is that what you mean by blood?
Absolutely. Yes. When I say it's in my blood, yes, I mean the tradition. Absolutely. So. Yeah, when I went to Africa for the first time and had those memories and knew that my dad and grandpa had tested our products over there, and then I did 3 generations later, like that's just rich.
Yes.
It's rich.
I want to ask you about conservation. You talked about, all the things that the Pittman-Robertson, which those who don't know, I preach about this all the time. That thing is an amazing, that's how the North American model of conservation works, and it's because of that. That's what's funding it, the majority of it. Also tags and everything else. What about trophy hunting? What do you feel about trophy hunting as far as, are you a trophy hunter, and what does that mean?
Yeah. I hunt for meat, and I hunt for old mature animals. Sometimes I hunt for meat. That's what I'm doing, right? Cow elk tastes amazing. Yeah. So depending on it, and if, cow herds need to be thinned down and this and that, then I do that, so I hunt for meat. But I think the beauty of what you can call it trophy hunting and can have a negative name for certain people. Okay, well, when I went and shot my first wild sheep, shot 2, kind of hoping for 2 more before I die. My deathbed, I don't know if I'll be thinking about it, but having the stone in the desert would be nice. But when I went on my Doll sheep hunt, I wanted the oldest, most mature ram I could. And I think when we do hunt older, more mature animals for conservation, depending on where and when and what things are, as a whole, in Western big game hunting, when we're talking about that, those that are maybe past their prime breeding and all those different things, and it bodes well for us to be able to hunt more animals too, and to have more animals that are in the wild. And so, would we all rather shoot a big buck? Yeah. We're also allowing that big buck, and that I'm going to end up eating the meat too, to live a pretty good long life, and to be able to breed plenty of does in that process. So, so for that, I think the word trophy hunting has this thing of like, means I'm going to be holding up a big gold cup and that's all I'm doing is trying to win that thing. But trophy hunting is, in the right conditions and species and environments, is one of the best forms of conservation there is.
Yes.
Right? As a hunter. You disagree with me?
No, 100%. Because it's the word trophy hunting has gotten a connotation of poaching, and they are completely different. Trophy hunting is just like you said. It's about matching wits with a mature animal, and one of the easiest ways to judge maturity at a long distance is rack. Is the size of the rack. That doesn't mean that it's always that happens. I mean, I had a guy, one of our hunt winners, shoot like a 280 bull that was 9 years old. He was just an old bull. After looking at him long enough, we go, that's an old bull, and took him, and he had no teeth left and all that stuff. It was a mature animal, and to conserve and to manage that herd, he needed to be taken out. So 100%. I agree 100% that trophy hunting has a negative connotation, and it's really about management and conservation. And it's not about holding up that trophy of conquering something. It's really about the adventure and conquering, matching wits with something in their backyard, and the adventure of the whole situation.
And the challenge, obviously, to kill an older, more mature buck or bull is a whole lot harder typically to go, and it means you're passing on a lot of animals, and so again that kind of reward aspect is there and everything. But I agree. I think as hunters it is cool when we can shoot something that's old. I did last year I shot a Cape buffalo in Africa, and it was kind of part of this fundraising hunt for some locals and a meat thing and this and that, so it wasn't a trophy bull hunt or a trophy bull price, but it was one where its horns were its bosses were huge and its horns weren't, because it was just an old beast. I thought it was a trophy. He was well past his breeding prime.
Absolutely.
And had those huge old bosses. Now, I mean, he could have been 2 foot wider. He could have been way wider, and so would that have made book and all these things. But I think it's important that we see that maturity trophy is in the eye of the beholder, and I think that we can see those things and say, wow, that was a trophy. That was like for me to have that be my first Cape buffalo. I could care less if he was a few years younger and he wasn't all ground down. I was fine with that. And so sometimes the mature animals like that. Or 2 seasons ago, Connor and I, for my son, for both of our Wyoming bulls, they were both broken on their main beam on one side. And they were 330, 340 class bulls, both of ours, and both of them weeks apart, separate hunts, were broken on the main beam. It was the most mature, biggest class bull that we had seen on either hunt. And so I shot that bull. But for me, that was still a trophy. It was awesome. It meant that he had battle scars and that he was, broken on that side. It was, kind of past his fourth, and, he was broken up there, both of them. So it was, you know what I mean? So it's, absolutely. I think it's cool, but I think there's an evolution that people go through, and I think it's okay. As hunters, there's seasons, and there's been many articles and things written on that, right, of hunters to kind of see that and understand that. I do think one of the things, if I'm against anything, it's us in the hunting community gunning each other down.
Agree.
So if you're a meat hunter, and that's what you like to do, and that is your passion for hunting, and you want to harvest meat, and that's the most important thing, then I want to respect you. And if I want to go harvest mature old things, and that's what I want to go do, and it's legal, and it's in with the tags given, and all those things, and it's ethical, and all that kind of stuff, then I want to respect you. And it can be, the same can be true for long distance. There's so many different things where we can have friendly fire from within, and I think we got enough non-friendly fire that we don't need to be shooting each other from within, and so I am big on having unity within the circle, given ethics and given legality and all those different things to be within there. Some people like to high fence hunt, and some people don't like to high fence hunt. And if it's legal, it's in Texas. Like, I don't need to go out of my way to go yell at those people if I'm not for that. So I think
it's not my thing, and that's okay.
That's correct. Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the time and the insight, and I think you've given me and audience a ton of things to think about. Your deathbed was that's a good one. That's a really good one, and I'll be thinking about that as I drive the beautiful 3.5 hours home
Yeah.
tonight in the dark, and trying to avoid running animals over that are trying to end the winter. So,
I know, right?
thank you very much for the tour and the time, Adam. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Ike. My pleasure, and it's always fun to be with another Wyoming person in our industry, especially multiple generations. So it's fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey folks, thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You got to hang out with some of the people that I think are the most interesting I've ever met. And remember, fair chase is the only way to hunt and take trophy big game. See you next time right here on Eastman's Podcast Edition.